trends in accounts payable. And thank you for joining us today. Most of you, wrong way. Sorry. Almost there. Okay, most of you are familiar with Canon over the years, and you think of cameras and printers and things like that. But Peter and I are with you today from Canon Information and Imaging Solutions. We are the software part of Canon. And Canon for many years has transformed organizations through digitization, technology, and experience. So Canon Information and Imaging Solutions, as well as other parts of the company, have broad expertise in both digital imaging and business process automation. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today after we go through the trends. So in 2020, more accounts payable departments will free themselves of low-value manual tasks and deliver on their promise to make AP department a source of financial efficiency, insights, intelligence, and innovation. So we work closely with a lot of industry analysts out there, and they do studies for us about finance and accounts payable and things like that. And we enjoy you know, seeing all of their information and sharing it with our customers and partners. But one of the things they looked at last year was technology adoption. So needless to say, when you look at things like on the right, document imaging and scanning, that's an area where people have been doing some level of that for many years. So the lighter blue indicates best-in-class companies, and the darker line is, you know, everyone else. So if you look to the middle of that chart, and you'll see automated routing and approval workflow. What this says is 61% of companies that really have best-in-class financial operations are doing that now, but 49% of pretty much everyone else is only doing that. So that leaves quite a bit of room for companies to get on board and do this to improve their AP technology internally. And of course, same goes for automated data capture and extraction, in particular OCR, which is some of what you'll hear more about later in our presentation. But this chart really shows you that although companies are starting to recognize the importance of AP, they're not all the way there yet, and there's a lot of room for companies to grow and improve in that area. So as far as the trends go, we're just going to talk about the #1 trend, accounts payable as a strategic powerhouse. So it wasn't too long ago, changing the pages doesn't like me today, sorry about that. It wasn't too long ago that accounts payable was perceived as a tactical back office function in the eyes of most senior finance executives. But that's really changing. So in the most recent survey, again, one of our analysts did for us, they showed that 55% of finance professionals perceive their accounts payable department as being very valuable or exceptionally valuable to the enterprise. So that's what is, becoming widely known, and companies are really starting to focus on that. So, and then what does that mean? Well, living up to the expectations in 2020 will require accounts payable departments to continue transforming themselves into a strategic partner to the enterprise. And the research that's been done show that to become best in class with finance functions, you must eliminate the manual repetitive tasks. So they indicate that top performing finance functions will run at 40% lower cost as a percentage of revenue as it becomes more strategic to an organization and they automate things. And then top performing finance functions will spend 20% more time doing things like analysis versus just simply data gathering, which is all they probably did in the past. And then top performing finance functions will be able to deliver budgets 15 days faster than their peers. So that was a study done for us by PwC Finance. And that's really good news because automated tools for optimizing a lot of these processes will make it easier. And, that's, of course, what we're talking about. So in addition to becoming a strategic powerhouse, trend #2 says accounts payable will become an information hub. So that's really, really key as well. So digital technology such as intelligent data capture, procure-to-pay automation, seamless integration with ERP applications, and also business intelligence and analytics can all help uncover valuable insights into things like operational efficiency, working capital, corporate spend, and compliance and fraud risks. So, you know, these technologies will help folks really uncover the information that can be of value to them. So the demand for visibility and business analytics is increasing, and I'm sure most of you have seen that in your companies as well. When finance executives were surveyed again in a recent survey that one of our analysts did, they said, how do you expect the demand for real-time visibility into AP data will change in the next year to 2 years? And, you know, the majority of the people said it'll be slightly higher. Some said it'll be significantly higher. Others said, you know, it's unchanged because the demands are already high. And the lowest percentage were those that said, you know, the demands are not that high. So, you know, overall, this indicates that it's becoming more and more important to have real-time visibility into the AP data. So accounts payable departments will do a better job of tapping into their gold mine of data in 2020. The AP information is valuable for a number of stakeholders. So if you look within your organization, you'll recognize that as far as CFOs go, you know, they want real-time visibility into working capital. They want analytical tools for strategic decisions. That's always important to them. And then there's the controller who is looking more, what's important to him would be, or he or she, I should say, he or she is that visibility into accounts payable data itself, cash flow analysis and management of the cash flow. Also, streamlined reporting is always very important to a controller. So these are critical things that you'll see. And then as far as the chief procurement officer that some of the larger companies may have on board, they also want strong visibility into accounts payable spend to help with their decisions going forward. So then, in addition to accounts payable as a strategic powerhouse, and then the second one, we're also looking at number 3, which is the next level function. So what does that mean? Accounts payable as a next level function. So the increased adoption of these smart systems in an organization will really be a game changer, transforming it actually into a profit center. So when surveyed again, 57% of the AP departments expect to earn more card rebates within the next 3 years. So in other words, early payment discounts, things of that nature. And then 52% of AP departments expect to capture more early pay, more early pay discounts as a percentage of the total spend. So card rebates and early pay are 2 of the key things. And then 34% of AP departments will expect that their standard payment terms will increase between 15 days and 90 days. So if they're not earning those early pay discounts and benefits like that for having an automated system, they're going to, you know, take longer to pay. So a lot of things to consider there for transforming AP into a profit center. So then the value of AP transformation. Smart systems, such as the ones we've been talking about, will provide accounts payable leaders with intelligence and foresight that they need to optimize their invoice and payment management, revolutionize the way that data is accessed and presented, and facilitate internal and external collaboration and enhance budgeting, forecasting, and planning. Those are all important things in that process. So AP transformation brings an enormous value to the different stakeholders in that organization. So like again, in this case of transforming the value of transforming AP, the CFOs want better control over the AP spend, more early pay discounts, as we mentioned before, transforming AP into a profit center, and then controllers want more efficient transaction processes, faster financial close at month end, quarter end, streamlined compliance, and then CPOs, again, chief procurement officers, want less maverick and out of budget purchases fewer late payments to key suppliers, and better contract compliance. Compliance, big area, as we all know. And then IT wants less burden supporting accounts payable. They want to extend the value of their ERP investments, and they want to streamline security and compliance. So that's why it's important to transform the AP organization. And then the last thing would be accounts payable as an innovator. When you look at, again, procure-to-pay technology adoption plans, functions across the corporate enterprise can benefit from emerging technologies, and accounts payable is certainly no exception. Advanced technologies such as robotic process automation, you'll see listed here, RPA, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, agile reporting dashboards, and mobile applications will have a significant impact on accounts payable departments in 2020. These technologies will help eliminate manual tasks and accelerate and inform decision-making and mitigate fraud and compliance risks. So that's all very critical there in mobile applications for AP. You can see at the bottom is one of the higher numbers as well. So those are the trends for 2020. And now I'm going to pass over to Peter to give you a little bit of idea of what Canon solutions we have and show our JD Edwards solution as well in a couple screenshots. Peter?
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Canon AP automation solution, how it can help you transform your AP process, as Lisa was just discussing over these 4 bullets previous to this slide. Let's talk about the Canon AP automation solution. First of all, our solution is, as you can see at the bottom, has received Oracle validated integration with the 3 major Oracle ERP solutions, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, as well as Oracle eBusiness Suite. So with that, we're able to provide an intelligent invoice capture capability in our end-to-end solution. Intelligent invoice capture basically means that we have an OCR technology, or optical character recognition technology, if you will, that is intelligent, that does not require templates, and that is able to learn as you go forward in the process. The business analytics is provided as well in this solution in order to be able to track the information based upon the invoices going through the process, from the receipt of the invoice into your system all the way through to the creation of the voucher in JD Edwards. Our ERP integration, as I mentioned already, is not only vitally important, but also the latest and the greatest of technology and the integration with these 3 ERP systems. And as we'll talk about in a minute with JD Edwards, we're going to talk about the leveraging of the Café One tool set within JD Edwards and what that means to you. Our mobile and cloud capabilities are also important, because if you're going forward in nowadays, in today's work environment, you know that executives are on the move all the time. Individuals who are responsible for reviewing and approving invoices are not always sitting in their office. And so therefore it's important that an AP automation solution has mobile capability for approvals and review, as well as cloud capabilities for accessing it should you be out of town or out of the country for that matter and want to be able to access the system. And last but not least is fraud detection. Any good accounts payable automation solution should be able to provide you with the ability to detect fraud. What that really means is that the system is looking for things such as duplicate invoices, for instance, or for an invoice coming in from a vendor that does not follow their normal pattern. For instance, a vendor who might send you an invoice every month for $100, all of a sudden you receive an invoice for $1,000. The system will detect that and it'll alert you to it. It will never correct these things. What it will do is it'll identify the individual who needs to review these and make a decision whether to go forth or not. Let's go to the next slide, Lisa. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to talk about our Canon AP automation solution that's integrated with JD Edwards, as well as with the Café One tool set of JD Edwards. What you're seeing here is the automated process overview. So when you look at the process, it starts at the supplier level at the top left-hand corner of the slide. in the receive, capture, and validate portion of the process. So for instance, a supplier will send an invoice. It may send it in by paper, or it may send it in by email. Invoices received by paper still have to be opened up by an individual, and they have to be scanned into a network folder in which our solution would monitor, and once one shows up, it will grab it and start the process. Emailed invoices from vendors do not require any manual intervention. An email will come into your email box, or multiple boxes, if you will, and our product there has a solution called Xmail Fetcher. It monitors your email boxes, and when an email comes in with an invoice attached, it'll grab that invoice off of that email and start the business process itself. So emailed invoices are never touched, opened, and printed out by anyone in your organization. So there's a great advantage, as you can see, to having your vendors sending in their invoices via email as opposed to paper. Once the Canon solution, which is down the bottom in light blue, receives an electronic invoice, we now begin the process of importing that electronic invoice into our optical character recognition, or OCR technology, called Iris Extract. That's the module here that we use to go ahead and analyze and extract the information directly from that invoice. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't require any templates. It looks for information on the invoice based upon reading it just like you and I read an invoice today. It looks for keywords, it extracts that information, and then it verifies that information against the master data in JD Edwards. So things like the open order PO, your supplier master, your GL codes, all of these, it is verifying against this data, against that information within JD Edwards. This makes sure that we have a validated invoice before we process that and generate the voucher within JD Edwards. If for some reason there is an exception and we cannot validate it, for instance, there's a wrong PO number, or somebody has smudged a paper document and the OCI couldn't read it properly, it goes, as you see above, back to accounts payable. There's an exception queue where someone would be in your organization who's been assigned to this as a job for them, would receive an email that says you have an invoice to review. They would click on the link, and then they would see the invoice on one side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen they would see the data elements that were extracted from that invoice and where the error occurred. They can correct it very simply with a click or two, and then move it on its way. Again, once we have a verified and approved invoice, we move into what's the next block on the right-hand side, which is our enterprise imaging platform. Our EIP platform is essentially the middleware, or the communication module, if you will, between our OCR technology and the Oracle JD Edwards Enterprise One solution. What happens here is that if you have a PO-based invoice and we have verified it, and we have matched the PO lines to the actual PO, then we will create or generate the voucher within JD Edwards automatically. So PO-based invoices that are sent in by email are essentially the best way to have an invoice go straight through without any manual intervention. If it's a non-PO invoice, then you probably have a workflow or multiple workflows in your organization, depending on the type of product or business or company or whatever the case might be, that the invoice must follow in order to receive approval in GL coding. So that takes place in this area here. Our workflow technology is extremely powerful, can essentially model any business rule that you might have in your organization, and therefore it'll select the appropriate workflow based on the type of invoice that came in. So once that comes into the GL, the non-PO comes into the workflow, it'll go through one or more steps in your workflow based upon your business rules. And so you may have individuals who will be reviewing it, but not assigning GL code. You might have someone else who assigns the GL code. You might have an executive that has to review it because of the dollar amount or what have you. So whatever that workflow is, it'll go through that workflow. And once we have an approved and validated invoice, it will generate the voucher within JD Edwards Enterprise One. Excuse me. Once we have generated the voucher in Oracle, JD Edwards, then it's up to the accounts payable to process your payments the normal way that you do it. This is the full end-to-end solution from the receipt of the email of the invoice to the voucher creation within JD Edwards. Next slide, please. Just to review the invoice data capture side, there's a number of things that are taking place in the data capture component. I want to just stress those once again. First of all, this is the verification piece. We're cross-checking the information on that invoice against your master data in JD Edwards. Exception handling is very simple and only requires a few mouse clicks, if any, to correct an error. And access to the referenceable data is allowed with quick turnaround, so you're able to go in and just do an F2 and search the database for whatever information you might need if you're going in and correcting an error. There's PO matching taking place. So if you have multiple line POs, it is matching the line items on the invoice to the line items on your PO. The line items typically are matched by amount and unit price. Typically, we don't do description, and the reason for that is because very rarely do vendors or suppliers use the same description as you do in your PO. So using the unit price and amount, the system is able to recognize what line item that is and match it up to the specific PO line item. Once that's done, you then have a validated multi-line PO invoice. And entering GL code for non-PO invoices would also happen at this stage of the game. For you need to be able to go in and provide the GL coding for any non-PO based invoice, and you can do that. The system is smart enough to recognize that you only need a certain range of codes and not maybe thousands of codes that you might have in your GL system. So they would only offer you those that are the most appropriate to the one who's doing the GL coding. Excuse me. Also, it's something to consider is that if you have a standard invoice, non-PO based invoice like your phone bill or water bill or rent bill or whatever that comes in every month and has the same GL coding, we can also accommodate a default GL code for that non-PO invoice. So that for those types of invoices, you would never have to touch them as well. As I mentioned earlier also, which is very important, is that there's no templates required. Templates really are a situation where you have to create a template for every invoice style from each of your vendors. That's a big task in itself, but managing that and keeping it up to date is a bigger task because many times the vendor or supplier will actually change their invoice format, if you will, and once they do, it does not work anymore. And now you have to figure out what changed or what happened. So title of keyword-based capture is what we use. We have AI technology, machine learning that's embedded into our OCR technology, requiring no templates. It's looking for those keywords, and it's looking for specific business rules that it goes ahead and finds the information required in order to match that information to your open PO. Go to the next slide. Here's an image of the invoice within JDE. If you're looking at the voucher within JD Edwards, you see that on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, when you open up that voucher, you would see an image of the invoice that created that voucher. We also are able to provide, in the next slide, more than one document attached to a voucher. Here we go. So let's say you have an invoice, it comes in, we create the voucher for it, but now you have other documents associated with that voucher, like packing slip, bill of lading, contract, whatever the case might be. You can attach those right here, as you can see. So really what you have is a document management system embedded in JD Edwards, where you can write directly from JD Edwards, see any of the documents that are stored in the content repository, which are part of our solution. And you can see the image of those documents without having to leave JD Edwards and sign into a document management solution to do so. Also, at this point in time, you have a drop-down menu which allows you to add comments and to create tasks if necessary. For instance, you could send it to another individual, perhaps the originator of the PO, for instance, if you wanted them to review it and provide some input. You can share this information by email. You can download it. You can check it out. You can detach invoices. You can detach any kind of document if you want, and provide that information to whoever it is in your organization, sharing that information all from one central database. All the data will be the same because it's all stored in one central repository. Next slide, please. You can also have collaboration, as I mentioned, with the voucher and with the information on it. So you have the ability here to send an invoice and a comment on it to anyone in the organization. All comments, by the way, throughout the process, we have lots of room for comments throughout, saved along with the voucher so that you have a complete view of all comments made during the process of approving that voucher, approving that invoice, excuse me. You also have a complete work history of that invoice from the time it was received all the way through to the creation of the voucher. So you know who touched it, when they touched it, what they did to it, any comments that they did to it. Being able to identify information such as this in a collaborative environment is extremely important, especially in the case of nowadays. If you're in a manual environment, that ability is not there, and you have no ability to go ahead and share that information unless you make a copy of the invoice and send it out. I see Brooke is coming through my slide here. One more point that I want to make, and that's based upon Café One. We have the ability not only to attach vouchers attach invoice to the voucher screen, but we also have the ability to attach any types of documents to any other screen within JD Edwards. For instance, any transaction screen. For instance, you might want to attach vendor information like a W-9 to a specific vendor record. You might want to attach collaborating information on a large GL entry. You may want to attach a contract at the PO level. So any place where you might want to identify contracts or identify documents that you want to attach in a specific transaction within JD Edwards is allowable, and the document would be maintained in our content repository. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke. I hope this was helpful to all of you, and I thank you for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. If you could just let me know when you see my screen, that would be great.
Let's see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa and Peter. All right.
Thank you.
I just want to cover a few follow-up items, and then we'll move into our question and answer section. Our webcast today is part of our free ongoing webcast series on JD Edwards. We are adding new webcasts every day, so feel free to go out to our website at getgsi.com/JD Edwards webcasts. Also, check out erptalk.com, which is a problem-solving forum where you can get JD Edwards and other enterprise applications questions answered, and you can also contribute and answer other people's questions as well. And be sure to keep up with us on social media. Listed on our screen, you can see all of our social media handles, and you can see our most up-to-date posts on what we've got going on with our webcasts, events, industry insights, and a whole lot more. And we also provide extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our weekly webcasts, our monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, and our online resource center, where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, and a lot more. And we also offer on-site and virtual workshops. Now, if you'd like to sign up for any of these, just go to getgsi.com, go to resources and events on the main page, and then you can select the appropriate link on the right-hand side. All right, now I see we have a few questions here. And I just wanted to remind you that if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so through the question panel at the bottom of your GoToWebinar console window, just on the right side of your screen. And if you did minimize your console earlier, all you have to do is click the left-facing arrow key to redisplay the panel. All right, so our question here is from Mark, and Mark asks, how long would it take to implement this software?
Okay, this is Peter. I'll answer that question. It really is different, Mark, for every organization because every organization is different. It really depends upon your readiness for moving into a new solution, which could be you might have to build your workflows if you don't have workflows today. You may have to clean up your master data if you don't have master data. But typically, as a rule of thumb, we like to give a 6 to 8 week answer. And it's going to depend, as I mentioned, on the readiness of your system to be automated as well as the availability of resources in your organization.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got another question here from George, and he said, how long does it take to capture the details of an invoice? If you have 500 vendors, how long would it take to do all that setup?
I think you kind of have two questions there. Let me answer the first one.
Yeah.
The first one is to capture the data off of an invoice takes seconds. That is a very fast process. We're talking about an intelligent OCR technology that's looking for keywords, as I mentioned before, and extracting that data. So it takes seconds to do that. How long it would take to extract the data from 500 vendors, if you had 500 invoices, I think is maybe what you're asking me. If that's the case, it's going to be very fast and extract that data. You're looking at the extraction of 500 invoices probably in minutes, but then the processing of that is going to take longer because you may have workflows and what have you. I'm not sure what the business rules you have in your organization, but it's a much faster process, I assure you, than a manual process, because that is now, the paper is gone and you now have the ability to follow your business rules through the workflow capabilities of the solution. I hope that answered your question, George.
Yeah, I have another follow-up question from George, and he says, we don't normally hear from vendors of any invoice format changes. So wouldn't you lose time between a failing invoice and then making changes?
No, our solution is not template-based, so the vendor can change the format of their invoices anytime they want. It does not affect our ability to extract the information from that invoice. Only if you have a template-based OCR solution, which ours isn't, do you have that issue.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. We have a couple more questions here. We have another question from David, and he said, how and where does it obtain GL code?
David, I believe well, maybe not. I believe I said that the information comes from the master data in JDE. So what happens is that we access the master data in your JD Edwards system, and therefore the GL codes are some of the data that we access. We pull that into our solution, and we, based upon the type of invoice that it is, because you may have different types of workflows required for different types of invoices, we then start the process, and we also slim down the number of selections or possibilities you have with the GL code. The GL codes are coming directly from your master data.
All right, another question from David. He said, how is the interface to JDE using BSFN or Z processor?
Our integration with JDE is utilizing web services, standard web services provided by JD Edwards. We don't use any proprietary software or any proprietary information that we have to embed into JD Edwards. We're just using the standard two-way communication web services from JD Edwards.
Okay, great. And then I have one last question, and the last question is, can your tool use budget information in JDE to identify budget overages?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the answer to that is yes, we can. Provided that the information resides in JD Edwards, we can access it and we can provide that information or the comparison to the invoice that we received and whether it would be over budget or still within budget.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wait, I got another question just came through. Question from David. He said, do we have to be at 9.2?
You actually don't have to be at 9.2, but to get the full capabilities of the solution with Café One, you need to be at 9.2. but we can also work with 9.1. Earlier versions than that, and I don't know, I'd have to check with our development team.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Peter and Lisa, and thank you everybody for your questions today. And that appears to be the end of our questions for today. I just wanted to thank everybody for those. And as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. And after today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact Lisa, Peter, or myself, and our contact info is currently listed on the screen. We just want to thank you again, everybody, for attending, and thank you again, Lisa and Peter, for the presentation, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.